It's just past 3 a.m. on December 26, 1980. Two security patrolmen at a U.S. Air Force base in rural England spot something strange through their perimeter fence lights, descending into the forest beyond the gate. They think it might be a downed aircraft. They're wrong. What they're about to walk into will become one of the most well-documented and most disputed UFO cases in history. Because unlike almost every other famous sighting, this one didn't leave just witnesses behind. It left a paper trail, an official memo, a real-time audio recording, and physical evidence that investigators actually measured. Whatever happened in that forest, someone wrote it down as it happened. Two security patrolmen at RAF Woodbridge in Suffolk saw unusual lights appearing to descend into Rendlesham Forest just outside the base's east gate, and 3 men were sent in. What they found was in wreckage. Entering the forest, the patrolman reported a strange glowing object among the trees. Metallic in appearance, triangular, roughly 2 to 3 meters across the base and about 2 meters high. It lit up the surrounding forest with white light, had a pulsing red light on top, and a bank of blue lights underneath. It seemed to be hovering, or resting on legs. Then something happened that's easy to skip past, but shouldn't be. On a nearby farm, the animals went into a frenzy. Not barking, not startled, a frenzy, loud enough and strange enough that multiple witnesses mentioned it independently in their later accounts. As the patrolman got closer to the object, it began to move, maneuvering away from them through the trees without making a sound. They radioed it in, and by the time backup arrived, it was gone. The next morning, investigators went back in daylight. At the site, they say they found 3 small triangular impressions pressed into the ground, arranged in a pattern that matched the base of the object the patrolman had described. Nearby trees showed damage, broken branches, scorched-like marks, but investigators brought radiation detection equipment to the site and took readings. The numbers were only slightly elevated, not dramatic, but present, and officially logged as part of the case file. 2 nights later, on December 28th, this stopped being something you could write off as a patrolman's story. Lieutenant Colonel Charles Halt, the base's deputy commander, a man with real authority and reputation to protect, personally led a follow-up team into the forest, and this time he brought a tape recorder and simply let it run. What's on that tape isn't secondhand. It's Halt, live, describing strange lights moving erratically through the trees in real time in his own voice as it was happening. Historians and researchers still refer to it today as the Halt Tape, one of the only pieces of audio evidence in UFO history recorded by a military officer while an incident was actively unfolding. Weeks later, in January of 1981, Halt formalized everything into an official memorandum addressed to the UK Ministry of Defence. Today it's known simply as the Halt Memo, and it's the single most important document in the entire case. Here's why that matters more than it might sound like it does. Most UFO cases, even famous ones, rely on blurry photographs, secondhand retellings, or accounts that only surface years after the fact, shaped and reshaped by memory. Rendlesham has almost something none of them have. A signed, dated, official government document written by a senior military officer. In his professional capacity, describing a specific unidentified object in specific technical detail, shape, size, lighting, movement, while addressing his own chain of command. That's not a campfire story, that's paperwork, and paperwork is a lot harder to dismiss. The memo describes this object's appearance and its movement through the trees on the first night, and it goes further, detailing additional star-like lights the team witnessed hovering in the sky for hours during Halt's follow-up investigation on the second night. Lights that appear to send down beams toward the ground, and there's one more detail that really gets a do. 2 of the servicemen involved, John Burroughs and Jim Peniston, later claimed they didn't just see the object, they touched it. Peniston described it as warm, covered in strange markings resembling hieroglyphics, and said that after making contact, he began receiving what he called telepathic binary code. String after string of 1s and 0s that he later transcribed by hand. Now here's the other side, because it deserves equal weight. Skeptical investigators point to a much simpler chain of events. That same night, a bright meteor fireball was reported burning up in the atmosphere over southern England, entirely capable of explaining a mysterious light descending into the forest. And a few miles away sits Orford Ness, home to a powerful rotating lighthouse beam, visible from roughly the same direction as the forest. Some researchers argue the patrolmen were simply watching that beam sweep through the trees, distorted by distance and adrenaline into something that looked like it was moving on its own. The ground markings? Local police and foresters who examined the site at the time suggested they were consistent with something far less exotic: animal digging. And the radiation readings, the ones that sound so compelling on their own, skeptics point out that they were close to the background levels and that similar minor readings turned up in unrelated spots nearby, which undercuts the idea that anything at that specific site was uniquely radioactive. As for the binary code and hieroglyphic markings, there's no physical object, no photograph, nothing beyond Peniston's own account, made years after the fact. It's the single hardest part of this case to independently verify. But here's what skeptics haven't been able to shake. Charles Halt never walked it back. Not once, not in over 40 years. Decades later, he was still telling the story publicly, exactly as he told it in 1981, and he went further, saying he'd since gathered additional statements from radar operators stationed at nearby airfields, who told him they'd tracked an unexplained object on their screens that same night, corroborating what he and his team saw with their own eyes on the ground. The British Ministry of Defence, for its part, concluded the incident posed no defense significance and never launched a full investigation of its own, despite having on file one of the most detailed first-hand military accounts of a UFO encounter in the world. Rendlesham Forest doesn't have the usual problem. Most UFO cases suffer from too little evidence, grainy photos, one shaky witness, a story that changes every time it's retold. This case has the opposite problem: an actual signed memo, a real-time audio recording, measured physical readings, multiple independent witnesses, a senior officer who never changed a single detail of his account for over 40 years. And it still isn't resolved. Skeptics have a complete, plausible explanation. The men who were there have a different one, and they've never backed down from it, even under public scrutiny for decades. So which do you believe? A lighthouse, a meteor, and adrenaline in the dark? Or something that actually landed in that forest in 1980? Let me know in the comments. And if you want more cases like this, there's a lot more where this came from.